Hey guys, I'm back again. I'm just actually deciding to do this extra video for tonight because I think this really does need to be addressed. Well, ever since pendulum cards, ever since I've actually started to get used to pendulum cards, I don't see why they're so hated. But yes, provided I do get why they actually are hated because of the whole pendulum summoning, which I admit can be pretty broken at sometimes. But here's the thing, it can easily be stopped. Very, very easily. I mean, what? Well, maybe you might have to build like decks that pretty much focus on countering spell cards. Like there's this one field spell that I can't remember the name of it, but I know the field spell that I'm talking about pretty much makes your opponent unable to activate any spell cards while you have a spellcaster on your field, but your opponent doesn't. I can't remember the name of that field spell, but that has always been big a big problem for me. My Pendulum Magicians, which is my all-time favorite deck, by the way. I love Pendulum Magicians so much. But yeah, well, this is pretty much the pros and cons of pendulums. Just the whole concept in general. Right, I'll start with the pros, which will be very easy. The pros are if you have like a pendulum deck which with a pretty good searcher, like say like for example Cleefort Scout in any Cleefort deck, you can search any Cleefort monster except Scout and add it to your hand, which is pretty good for a low cost of 800 life points. And if your pendulum monsters have a very good difference in their scales, like for example, I like to use Dragon Vein Magician and Dragon Pit Magician, which have the scale of 1 and 8, which is perfect for me, and I got a lot of search options. That's a very good pro of pendulum monsters, especially if you go first. If you get a good hand, you can instantly like pendulum summon whatever you want. But of course, there's also going to be those kind of cards which will easily just stop pendulum decks in their tracks at all. Like maybe a little combo as well, like maybe anti-spell fragrance and vanity's emptiness, which is not really that good of a card to be quite honest. Vanity's emptiness. I'd rather just like maybe have vanity's beam, maybe depending on what kind of deck you have. But yeah, the the flaw the flaws of pendulums is what I kind of want to mainly focus on here though, because I feel like they're pretty unfairly judged just because of how broken the pendulum summoning actually is. But there's actually two major cons to pendulums I kind of want to point out. Number one is sometimes where if you come across a pendulum deck user, sometimes they'll just like throw out everything in their hand in one turn. And if you went first and you have like a bottomless just waiting there, you can banish every single monster they just pendulum summoned, leaving them absolutely defenseless. Like maybe like roughly usually what I see about is like one card in the back row and the rest all monsters pendulum summoned, and they would all get bottomless trap hold, all banished, so they don't go to the extra deck to get pendulum summoned again just the next turn. So yeah, they're just leaving themselves wide open for a lot of easy attacks. And who knows, you might have a very good back row too to counter their attacks. So that's one con. People who just throw out everything they pendulum summon on the first turn. Alright, the second con is the fact they're treated as spell cards, which means, I don't know, like, if anyone has Mystical Space Typhoon, they can easily just get rid of a little one of your pendulum scale monsters very easily. Anything really. And if you're in traditional format, you can actually suffer a heavy storm, so you have no back row at all to defend yourself with when your pendulum scale monsters are gone, which is absolutely fatal to pendulum users. Which is which is why I kind of like using my pendulum magicians, since they're pretty much very good searchers, and I can usually end up like pendulum summoning 2 level 7 monsters and getting Red Eyes Flare Black Metal Dragon, I think his name is, which has a pretty good effect and solid attack as well. But that's not the point. I'll get to that in a future video. Anyways, where was that? Yes, the second con of pendulum monsters, the fact that they are spell cards, treated as spell cards. Well, that pretty much means anything that's anti-spell based, or at least a little, well, back row destruction based, could easily wipe the floor with pendulum monsters. Since most pendulum decks I usually tend to see are like level 5 or higher. That's what I usually see. That's my own personal experience on doing that work. And they're not really as bad as everyone makes them out to be. They kind of, well, the pendulum summon feature is pretty broken, but I like to think they kind of balance each other out. You see, with all those cons of pendulum monsters. I mean, I'm a fan of pendulums myself. I love them. But I I once tried Cleethorts. They didn't really work that well. Pendulum Magicians, a whole different story. They work so much better. And in my honest opinion, they're pretty much more broken, if anything. So yeah, that's the pros and cons. Well, mainly cons of pendulums. Well, pendulum monsters and summon. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know what I'm saying now. I'll see you guys later.